The air over northern Italy on July 20, 1944, was a clear, hard blue. First Lieutenant Bruce W. Carr, a 22-year-old pilot from Iowa flying with the 380th Fighter Squadron, 363rd Fighter Group, was leading a flight of 4 P-51D Mustangs on a fighter sweep. Their job was targets of opportunity, to clear the skis of the Luftwaffe and strafe anything that moved on the ground. Carr, known by the radio call sign Kingfish 31, was an aggressive and skilled pilot, but on this mission, a sense of unease nagged at him. His brand-new Mustang, which he had named Angel's Playmate, had been giving him minor mechanical trouble. The engine wasn't sounding quite right. As they prowled near the Austrian border, Carr spotted movement below, a lone German transport train. It was a classic vulnerable target. Signaling to his wingman, he peeled off into a steep dive, the Mustang's Merlin engine screaming. He made his strafing pass, his 6.50 caliber machine guns chewing into the train cars. Pulling up, he felt a sudden, violent shudder. A plume of black smoke streamed from the engine cowling. A stray, lucky round from the train's flak gun, or perhaps a piece of shrapnel from the target itself, had found its mark. The temperature gauge spiked. The Merlin's roar became a sickening, labored clatter. He was losing power and fast. Kingfish 31, I'm hit. Engine's gone. Carr's voice was calm, but the reality was dire. He was deep in enemy territory over the Alps. Bailing out meant almost certain capture. Trying to glide to Switzerland was impossible. He was losing altitude too quickly. His wingman, Lieutenant Joe Lang, circled him protectively, but there was little he could do. Carr's only hope was to find a flat piece of ground before the engine seized completely. Through the oil-smeared canopy, he saw what looked like a large, grassy meadow ahead. It was his only option. He fought the dying controls, nursing the failing Mustang down. As he got lower, his heart sank. The meadow was, in fact, a soggy, treacherous peat bog. The wheels of the P-51 touched down and immediately dug in. The aircraft nosed over violently, its propeller splintering, and came to a jarring, inverted stop in the muck. Dazed but alive, Carr unhooked his harness and dropped into the cold, murky water. He was behind enemy lines, his aircraft a total wreck. He had two choices, surrender or evade. Carr chose the latter. Shedding his Mi-West life jacket, he began to crawl and slosh his way out of the bog, using the wreckage for cover. He could hear German voices approaching. He made it to a tree line and vanished into the woods just as soldiers arrived to secure the crash site. Thus began one of the most audacious odysseys of a downed airman in the European theater. For the next 2 days and nights, Bruce Carr moved only under the cover of darkness. He was cold, wet, hungry, and utterly alone. He oriented himself by the stars, moving south, hopping to eventually loop around and reach Allied lines hundreds of miles away. His evasion was textbook, avoiding roads, stealing a few raw vegetables from fields, drinking from streams. On the third night, exhausted and realizing the impossibility of his cross-country trek, he made a fateful decision. He needed to get back into the air. Carr had observed German air activity. He knew there were Luftwaffe bases in the region. His new, insane plan began to form. He would infiltrate an enemy airfield, find a serviceable German fighter, and fly it home. It was the kind of scheme born of equal parts desperation, arrogance, and a fighter pilot's innate belief that any aircraft was just a vehicle waiting for the right driver. Under the cover of darkness on July 22, Carr crept up to the perimeter of a German airfield. It was bustling with activity under floodlights, a Nachtschansatz night operation base, likely home to Messerschmitt Bf 110 night fighters or Junkers Ju-88 bombers. He watched from the shadows, studying the patterns of the guards, the fueling routines, the location of parked aircraft. He saw a row of Focke-Wulf FW 190 fighters, their distinctive radial engines silhouetted against the hangar lights. The FW 190 was a legendary opponent, a nimble, deadly bird. And one of them, parked at the far end of the line, looked like it had just been serviced. Waiting for a shift change when guard attention lapsed, Carr sprinted from the tree line low and fast and ducked under the wing of the nearest aircraft. He moved from shadow to shadow, using the parked planes as cover. The sounds of German voices and clanging tools were all around him. His heart pounded in his ears. Reaching the chosen Focke-Wulf, he saw it was fueled and armed. The cockpit canopy was unlocked. This was it. He hauled himself onto the wing, slid open the canopy, and dropped into the cockpit. The interior was alien. All the labels were in German. The instruments were laid out differently. The throttle worked in the opposite direction, push forward for power, pull back to idle, the opposite of Allied aircraft. In the darkness, by feel and logic, he began to decipher the controls. He found the primer, the magneto switches, the starter. He knew he had one chance. Flooding the engine or botching the start would bring every guard on the field running. Taking a deep breath, he went through the sequence. To his astonishment, the BMW 801 radial engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. The sound was tremendous in the quiet night. Immediately, shouts erupted. Flashlight beams swept across the tarmac. Carr didn't wait. He released the brakes and shoved the throttle forward. The FW-190 lurched ahead, its tail coming up. He had no time for a proper run-up or check. He aimed the nose down the illuminated runway, praying there were no chocks or equipment in his path. German soldiers ran onto the field, waving their arms. A machine gun opened up from a control tower, tracers arcing past the canopy. Carr kept the throttle firewalled. The FW-190, a superb machine, accelerated quickly. At the last moment, he pulled back on the stick, remembering it was the same function, and the fighter lifted cleanly into the black sky. He was airborne in an enemy fighter, over enemy territory, with no idea how to work its radios, its gun sight, or its complex engine controls. And every German flak battery and fighter within 50 miles would now be hunting for him. He stayed low, skimming the treetops to avoid radar and visual detection. He pointed the nose west, toward the fatting front lines. The flight was a white-knuckle ordeal. He dared not touch any knobs for fear of cutting the engine or feathering the prop. He nursed the unfamiliar plane, watching the temperature gauges with anxiety. As dawn began to break, he saw the torn landscape of the front ahead. Then he saw the distinctive contrails of high-flying aircraft, P-51 Mustangs on a morning patrol. This presented a new mortal danger to the American pilots. He was a lone FW-190, a prime target. If he tried to wag his wings or perform the standard Allied identification maneuver, they might not see it, or they might think it was a ruse. He was seconds from being shot down by his own side. Taking a desperate chance, Carr pulled up into a climb, heading directly for the Mustang formation, but deliberately keeping his speed slow and his landing gear down, the universal sign of a non-hostile, surrendering aircraft. The Mustang flight leader, Captain Joseph Lang, his own wingman from 2 days prior, though Carr didn't know it, saw the strange sight. A Focke-Wulf, gears down, climbing weakly toward them, not making any aggressive moves. It was bizarre. Lang held his fire. He led his flight down to escort the German fighter, ordering his men to cover it but not shoot. They herded the FW-190 toward their home base at Saint-Dizier, France. Running on fumes and nerve, Carr managed a bumpy but safe landing on the pierced steel planking of the Allied airfield. He rolled to a stop, surrounded by a perimeter of armed jeeps and astonished American ground crew. When the canopy opened, and a man in a tattered, mud-stained American flight suit climbed out, the disbelief was total. Bruce Carr had done it. Interrogation and celebration followed. The intelligence value of a pristine, flyable FW-190 was immense. For Carr, the ordeal was over. He had been shot down, evaded for days, stolen an enemy fighter from under the noses of its guardians and flown it home. His commanding officer reportedly greeted him by saying, "Bruce, where the hell have you been?" The story of Bruce W. Carr is more than a tale of daring. It is a masterclass in adaptability, audacity, and the sheer force of will to reverse a catastrophic situation. He didn't just survive behind enemy lines. He he turned the enemy's greatest asset against them. In stealing the FW-190, he achieved what every fighter pilot dreams of, not just defeating an enemy aircraft, but commanding it, mastering its secrets in moments of supreme pressure, and using it to write his own ticket home.
The layout is unique.
Yes, optimizing for night flying, perhaps. The armament controls are integrated here.